Hey everyone, it's Blair here at Time Trades. Okay, lots of interesting stuff going on in the timing world for this week's video. So I want to dive straight into it, and we're going to lead off by talking about ADA or Cardano. Now, there was some very interesting looking forecasts earlier in the week, and I tweeted those out. And then, of course, the next day, the forecast changed quite a bit. So I thought I would take advantage of that event to sort of research what was going on under the hood with the machine learning engine and the algorithms that power it to figure out why did that forecast change so much just overnight. And it has to do with how the system automatically identifies pivots. So it will automatically identify pivot lows and pivot highs, and then it trains the model to find those pivot lows and pivot highs. And what was happening is in this little consolidation here, it was identifying about 3 different pivots in this consolidation. And on the day that it changed, it found a new pivot or a date had changed on one of the automatically found pivots. And that's really what was behind the big change in the forecast. So I thought I'd take advantage of that to kind of rework things a little bit to reduce the occurrence of that happening. So from now on, starting with tonight's retrain, that should occur less. I can't eliminate that occurrence, but because there's always going to be new pivots appearing in the price data. However, I can reduce the chances of multiple new pivots being automatically identified. And that's kind of what I did with the change that's going live. So what you're seeing right now is ADA's current forecast using that change that I've already done. So this is not a development system. This is what you would see on the site today. And it is still just as interesting as when I tweeted it out earlier in the week with a big forecast pivot low, 90% probability on October 30th. And then some probabilities of a 5-day decline into a second pivot low of 86% probability on November 5th. So there's some very interesting volatile behavior here. And because these are pivot lows, this gives us a good opportunity to sort of put some pretty low bids in and see if we can get filled on them during this time frame. Because after this November 5th pivot low, we see a small probability of a move up, but it's not huge. It's a 20% probability, but it is for a 2 standard deviation move, and a 2 standard deviation move up in Cardano is 26.3%. You can see that here on the little info button. 2 SD or standard deviation 5-day percent change up is 26%. Okay. So this is measured close to close over the last 5 trading days. So that's November 11th. So that would be 5 trading days after this pivot low on November 5th. The other thing to point out here is you see this hollow or gap in the probabilities of down days up here. And what I found is gaps like that can also lead to price moves up as price tends to fill that gap. And you can see this probability of a 2 standard deviation up day actually fits right into that gap. So just to wrap things up on Cardano, it looks like there's a great buying opportunity coming up in the first week of October. It's going to be volatile. There's going to be lots of movements up or down. I don't know if this first pivot low is going to be lower than the second one or vice versa. But it looks like a good opportunity to put some bids in. And the other thing that I will point out here is when it comes to planning exits on trades like this, take a look at Gann waves. And if we kind of ignore this yellow period in the Gann wave here, which is in late September. And the Gann waves, for those that are new, are the yellow and blue stripes, okay? So this is a lunar-based indicator. But we can see here that this Gann wave here coincided with the top, and this Gann wave back here coincided with the top. So it doesn't happen all the time, but it can happen some of the time. This could potentially be a top here, this yellow Gann wave, and this would coincide with these 1 standard deviation moves up. So we're starting to see the outline of a high probability move here with a pivot low October 30th or November 5th, and potentially a move up into this late November time period. So that might be a time to maybe trade smaller size with more leverage, and because the timing is a little bit more advantageous for that during this period. And then you can revert back to kind of standard leverage for your other trade opportunities. Okay, so that's ADA. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. I've been pretty quiet on Bitcoin the last few weeks. The Time Trades has not been giving a lot of, signals. And of course, that means it just goes on a tear going up from 40K to 65. And it's pulled back here a little bit. But I'm looking at this as a great opportunity to enter long. And I'm looking at this big bar for a 2 standard deviation move up on November 3rd. So this is a 73% probability of a 2 standard deviation move up, and 2 standard deviations up in Bitcoin is 20%, okay? So big, juicy potential move here in the forecast. And if we go back in time and sort of line this up with Gann waves, we can see that in that black period after yellow, of course, the last time that happened was very bullish. We had a few up days in early September in the black period after yellow, and then things fell apart. We had a very similar pattern in August, and July didn't happen at all. So some of the Gann wave patterns look supportive of this high probability move up. But again, we're not seeing a heck of a lot of follow through. And in fact, we're also seeing a lot of 1 standard deviation moves down here. So this would be the kind of move that or at least if I trade it, I would be pretty quick to take profits here. I'd look to get positioned kind of mid to late in this yellow period, because mid to late in yellow seems to be where the Bitcoin price makes a temporary low. And the other trick I like to use with Bitcoin is I like to take a look at Venus and the South Node, because when these 2 planets cross on the wheel of 24, so Venus is blue, South Node is white. When these 2 planets, well, the South Node is no planet, but it's a point. So when these 2 longitudes cross, they tend to correlate with dumps. And you can see here that blue crossing white back in September correlated with a pretty good dump. Back in August, it correlated with a little dump. Now, if we go forward in time to October, nothing really happened. There was like 1 red day on October 12th, and that was it. So not really a dump here, which is kind of indicative of a broader bullish picture. So the fact that we didn't get much of a dump here is good. So this gives us some clues as to timing here about when to potentially take advantage of this 2 standard deviation move up on November 3rd. Maybe this is something where, maybe we would start entering in the yellow period, but just sort of phase it in and be very, very patient on the entry, because it looks like the day before that big move up, we've got a likelihood of a move down just because of how prices behaved previously when Venus crosses the south node location. All right, so pretty interesting opportunities here in ADA and Bitcoin. Let's take a quick look at stocks. I always like to look at the Qs. That's what I tend to trade the most. And the QQQ is showing a probability of an up day here, or sorry, a pivot high, a 37% probability of a pivot high on October 29th. And that is supported by a 25% probability of an up day. And this is happening during a yellow period. And also there's tons of earnings announcements and that happening this week, which tends to be supportive of the market as well. Also, if you look back in time, you see the yellow periods, with the exception of the last one, tend to be generally bullish, right? In general, price seems to do well during these yellow periods. So that's something to keep in mind. So while I'm actually quite bearish on the Qs, I don't want to go bearish too soon. And the reason why I'm bearish on stocks in general is if you take a look at short-term waves here. Short-term waves is a big reason why I'm bearish. And these are cycles made from the inner planets, and light blue is a cycle I'm really watching closely. So if we squeeze price together all the way back to the COVID low, you can see why I'm so bearish. The last time light blue made a peak this high, it was basically the day of the COVID low, March 23rd, 2020, okay? So this would make sense to me as a kind of a perfect bookend to this entire move up if we make another very high pivot here in the light blue short-term wave, and then it swooshes back down. So this is why I'm pretty bearish, despite there being a lack of kind of bearish forecast here in the QQQs. I'm looking at this pivot low on November 30th as being basically a giant magnet to pull down price. The question is, when is this going to get started? And I think it's going to get started soon after the bulk of earnings are done. So coming up, we've got October 29th. That's later this week. That would be Thursday, I believe. And that's also one of the last days in this yellow period. That would be a natural point for this to turn around and to start heading down into November 30th. So let's see if we can, whenever I look at indexes, I also like to look at multiple indexes to see if there's any confluence between the indexes. So this is spiders. Spiders are projecting a 59% probability of a pivot high tomorrow on Monday, and there's no probability of a pivot low happening until January. That doesn't mean anything, I guess, one way or the other. In the short term, I'm just focusing on this pivot high here and going to play it from level to level. Let's look at diamonds. Okay, so diamonds are showing another big up day on October 28th, and that also aligns with the pivot high day on the Qs. And after that, the forecast gets pretty quiet. There's a little bit of a probability of a low here and some probability of 1 standard deviation up days in mid-November. But looks like there's about a 12% probability of a pivot low on November 19th. Regardless, what I'm looking for this week in stocks is kind of a major pivot high here that is tied to the light blue short-term wave. And we will be looking to see prices pivot and reverse mid to late in this week once the supportive action of earnings is over. Okay, that's it for me. Hope you have a good week trading. Take care, and we'll talk again next week. Bye now.